What is the difference between web page, website, web server, and search engine? We're going to look at the difference between those four. In this article, we describe various web-related concepts. These concepts are web pages, websites, web servers, search engines. These terms are often confused by newcomers to the new web or are incorrectly used. Let's learn what they each mean. As with any area of knowledge, the web comes with a lot of jargon. Don't worry, we don't overwhelm you with all of it. We have a glossary if you are curious. However, there are a few basic terms you need to understand at the outset, since you will hear these expressions all the time as you read on. It's easy to confuse these terms sometimes, since they refer to related but different functionalities. In fact, you will sometimes see these terms misused in news reports and elsewhere. So getting them mixed up is understandable. We will cover these terms and technologies in more detail as we explore further. But these quick definitions will be a great start for you. A web page. A web page is a document which can be displayed in a web browser. A web page is a document which can be displayed in a web browser, such as Firefox, Google Chrome, Opera, Microsoft Internet Explorer or Edge, or Apple's Safari. So these are the various web browsers they are talking about. They are saying that a web page is a document which can be displayed in a web browser. Furthermore, these are also often called just pages. So if you find someone saying go to my home page or go to my page, this is what they mean. They are meaning a web page. A website. A website is a collection of web pages which are grouped together and usually connected together in various ways, often called a website or a site. So if you find someone calling it a website, it also means a site, which is simply a collection of web pages which are grouped together. How do you find let's look at the web server. A web server is a computer that hosts a website on the internet. So if you see Facebook, Google, they are all hosted somewhere by a web server. So a web server is a computer that hosts a website on the internet. How about a search engine? A search engine is a web service that helps you find other web pages. These search engines include Google, Bing, Yahoo, and DuckDuckGo. Google is owned by Google Incorporation. Bing is owned by Microsoft. Yahoo is owned by Yahoo Incorporation, and Google DuckDuckGo is an open source search engine. Search engines are normally accessed through a web browser, e.g., you can perform search engine searches directly in the address bar of Firefox, Chrome, etc., or through a web page, e.g. bing.com or DuckDuckGo. So you can make a web search either using a web browser or a web page. Hope you've seen the difference. Let's look at a simple analogy. A public library. This is what you would generally do when visiting a library. First of all, you'll find a search index or look for the title of the book you want when you go to the library. Then 2, you'll make a note of the catalog number of the book. And then 3, you'll go to that particular section containing the book. Find the right catalog number and then get the book. So this is generally what you would do when visiting a library. Let's compare the library with a web server. The library is like a web server. It has several sections, which is similar to a web server hosting multiple websites. The different sections, which may be science, math, history, etc., in the library are like websites. Each section is like a unique website. 2 sections do not contain the same book. You cannot have a math book in the science section and in the English section. It will only be in the math section. The books in each section are like web pages. One website may have several web pages, e.g. the science section, which will be a website, will have books on heat, sound, thermodynamics, statistics, etc. And these will be the web pages. The website will be the science section in that library. Web pages can each be found at a unique location, which we normally call the URL. The search index is like the search engine. Each book has its own unique location in the library. 2 books cannot be kept at the same place. 2 books cannot be kept at the same place, which is specified by the catalog number. So the number tells you where the book is. If the number is telling you that a book of math is on number 69, you cannot find a book of English on number 69. There must be a book of math. Hope that makes sense and is clear. Active learning. Deeper dive. So let's dig deeper into how those 4 terms are related and why they are sometimes confused with each other. A web page. A web page is a simple document displayed by a browser. Such documents are written in HTML language, which we look into more detail in other articles. A web page can be embedded a variety of different types of resources, such as a web page can embed a variety of different types of resources, such as style information, controlling a page's look and feel, scripts which add interactivity to the web, and then media, which include images, sounds, and videos. Note: browsers can also display other documents such as PDF files, or images. But the term web page simply refers to HTML documents. Otherwise, we only use the term document. All web pages available on the web are reachable through a unique address. To access a page, just type its address in your browser address bar. To access a web page or to access a page, just type its address in your browser address bar. So when you're using a computer on a browser such as Firefox, Mozilla Firefox, what you see in red is what we call the address bar. This is where you type your search. A website is a collection of linked web pages plus their associated resources that share a unique domain name. Each web page of a given website provides explicit links, most of the time in the form of clickable portion of text that allow the user to move from one page of the website to another. So that is simply a web page. A website, I mean. It has very, very many web pages or pages, all linked together with various unique links. Let's continue. To access a website, type its domain name in your browser address bar, and the browser will display the website's main web page or home page, casually referred as the home. So this is how you type it. This is the domain name of mozilla.org. http://developer.mozilla.org is the domain name. As you can see, it's circled in red. The ideas of a web page and a website are especially easy to confuse for a website that contains only one web page. Such a website is sometimes called a single page website. So if you find a website with only one page, it is referred to as a single page website. That means you can't move from one web page to another. It is only one like this. Let's look at what we call a web server. A web server is a computer hosting one or more websites. Hosting means that all the web pages and their supporting files are available on that computer. The web server will send any web page from the website it is hosting to any user's browser per user request. So even if someone is in Kenya, is in Mbarara or in Magulu, the web server will provide a specific web page from the website depending on what you are requesting for. If you're requesting for a contact page, it will give you a contact page. If you're requesting for a videos page, it will give you a videos page. If you're requesting for an images page, it will give you an images page. That is how a web server works. Don't confuse websites and web servers. For example, if you hear someone say my website is not responding, it actually means that the web server is not responding, and therefore the website is not available. More importantly, since a web server can host multiple websites, the term web server is never used to designate a website, as it could cause great confusion. In our previous example, if we said my web server is not responding, it means that multiple websites on that web server are not available. So don't confuse the two. Search engine. Search engines are a common source of confusion on the web. A search engine is a special kind of website that helps users find web pages from other websites. It helps users find web pages from other websites. There are plenty out there. We have Google, we have Bing, we have Yandex, we have DuckDuckGo, etc., and many more. Some are generic, some are specialized about certain topics. Use whichever you prefer. Many beginners on the web confuse search engines and browsers. Let's make it clear. A browser is a piece of software that retrieves and displays web pages. It is just a piece of software that retrieves and displays web pages. A search engine is a website that helps people find web pages from other websites. That is a search engine. The confusion arises because the first time someone launches a browser, the browser displays a search engine's homepage. This makes sense because obviously the first thing you want to do with a browser is to find a web page to display. Don't confuse the infrastructure e.g. the browser with the service e.g. the search engine. The distinction will help you quite a bit, but even some professionals speak loosely, so don't feel anxious about it. Here is an instance of Firefox showing a Google search box as its default startup page. So have a look at this. The browser is called Mozilla Firefox, and it is displaying a search engine of Google. This is the home page of the search engine of Google. Things will get clearer when you do them more practically in future. Let's talk about HTTP. I know you've already just defined it. HTTP, what is HTTP in for? Let's talk about it in detail. HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. HTTP is the protocol used to transfer data over the web. It is part of the Internet Protocol suite and defines commands and services used for transmitting web page data. It is part of the Internet Protocol suite and defines commands and services used for transmitting web page data. HTTP uses a server client model. A client, for example, may be a home computer, laptop, or mobile device, or smartphone. The HTTP server is typically a web host running web server software, such as Apache or IIS. When you access a website, your browser sends a request to the corresponding web server, and it responds with an HTTP status code. If the URL is valid and the connection is granted, the server will send your browser the web page and related files. Some common HTTP status codes include. So let's look at some of the codes you may get when you're searching for a web server, and we've seen some of these. The first code is 200. This defines and shows that your request was successful or the web page exists. This is the first status code. The second code is 301. This code shows that a web page has been moved permanently. This normally shows that a web page has been moved permanently. We shall look at these codes practically and show you will have to define them. A 401 shows that you're making an unauthorized request. So if you have no authorization to access a given web page, you'll get an error, a status code of 401. When you get a status code of 403, this shows that the web page that you're trying to access is forbidden. You're not supposed or you're not allowed to access that web page. When you get an error of 500, this means that there is an internal server error, often caused by an incorrect server configuration. So if the server that is hosting the website has some error, you'll have a 500 status code. We shall look at them practically. HTTP also defines commands such as get and post, which are used to handle form submissions on websites. The connect command is used to facilitate a secure connection that is encrypted using SSL. The connect command is used to facilitate a secure connection that is encrypted using SSL. Encrypted HTTP connections take place over HTTPS. The moment you encrypt an HTTP, it becomes an HTTPS, an extension of HTTP designed for secure data transmissions. Note: URLs that begin with HTTP:/ are accessed over the standard hypertext transfer protocol and use port 80 by default. They use port 80 by default. URLs that start with HTTPS:/ are accessed over a secure HTTPS connection and often use port 443. I hope that is clear, but you need not to do more revision related to this. Unit 4, request methods. HTTP defines a set of request methods indicating the desired action to be performed upon a resource. Although they can also be nouns, these request methods are sometimes referred as HTTP verbs. The most common requests are get and post. The get method requests a data representation of the specified resource. Requests using get should only retrieve data. So just like the word get, it means get something. So when you use the get method, you only requesting data. And we are saying that requests using get should only retrieve data. You're only getting data from a given website or from a given portal. The post method sends data to a server so it may change its state. This is the method often used for HTML forms. The post method sends data to a server so it may change its state. For example, when you're searching something on Google and you type in your search word and then click on search, what will happen is you'll be sending a GET request. HTTP request methods. HTTP defines a set of request methods to indicate the desired action to be performed for a given resource. Although they can also be nouns, these request methods are sometimes referred to as HTTP verbs. Each of them implements a different semantic, but some common features are shared by a group of them. E.g., a request method can be safe, idempotent, and cacheable. So these are the other methods that we normally use when programming. We have the GET request that we've defined before. The GET method requests a presentation of a specified resource. Requests using GET should only retrieve data. Then we have the head. The head method asks for a resource identical to that of a head request, to that of a GET request, but without the response body. We shall see this practically, but put it in your head that the head method asks for a response identical to that of a GET request. We have the post that we've looked at. The post method is used to submit an entity to the specified resource, often causing a change in state or side effects on the server. We also have the put. The put method replaces all current representations of the current resource with the request payload. Then we have the delete. The delete method deletes the specified resource. Then we have the connect. The connect method establishes a tunnel to the server identical to the target resource. The connect method establishes a tunnel to the server identified by the target resource. Then we have the options method. The options method is used to describe the communication options for the target resource. Then we have the trace. The trace method performs a message loop back test along the path to the target resource. Patch. The patch method is used to apply partial modifications to a resource. The patch method is used to apply partial modifications to a resource. That is all about HTTP request methods. Let's continue with proxy servers. Proxy server. The actual nuts and bolts of how the internet works are not something people often stop to consider. The problem with that is the inherent danger of data security breaches and identity theft that come along with the cute dog pictures, 24-hour news updates, and great deals online. But what actually happens when you browse the web? You might be using a proxy server at your office on a VPN network, or you could be one of the more tech savvy who always use a proxy server of some kind or another. So what is a proxy server? A proxy server is any machine that translates traffic between networks or protocols. It's an intermediary server separating end-user clients from the destinations that they browse. Proxy servers provide varying levels of functionality, security, and privacy depending on your use case, needs, or company policy. If you are using a proxy server, traffic flows through the proxy server on its way to the address you requested. The request then comes back through that same proxy server, and then the proxy server forwards the data received from the website to you. So in simple terms, a proxy server acts as a gateway between you and the internet. So this is you on your left making a request to the web. Your request goes through the web server through the web proxy server and then goes to the web. After finding what you need on the web, it comes back still through the proxy server to your computer, making it secure. Let's continue. If that's all it does, why bother with a proxy server? Why not just go straight from to the website and back? Why bother using a proxy server? Modern proxy servers do much more than forward web requests, all in the name of data security and network performance. Proxy servers act as a firewall and web filter, provide shared network connections, and catch data to speed up common requests. A good proxy server keeps users and internal network protected from the bad stuff that lives out in the world internet. Lastly, proxy servers can provide a high level of privacy. They are somehow related to VPNs, but they are better than VPNs. So let's look at how does a proxy server operate. Every computer on the internet needs to have a unique internet protocol or IP address. Think of this IP address as your computer's street address. Just as the post office knows to deliver your email to your street address, the internet knows how to send the correct data to the correct computer by the IP address. A proxy server is basically a computer on the internet, with its own IP address that your computer knows. When you send a web request, your request goes to the proxy server first. The proxy server then makes your web request on your behalf, collects the response from the web server, and forwards you the web page data so you can see the web page in your computer. When the proxy server forwards your web request, it can make changes to the data you send and still get you the information that you expect to see. A proxy server can change your IP address so the web server doesn't know exactly where you are in the world. It can encrypt your data so your data is unreadable in transit. And lastly, a proxy server can block access to certain web pages based on IP address. So that is why you can see that sometimes you may be searching for a web page and they tell you this web page is not available in your country. This is because if someone uses a proxy, they can stop you from accessing some given pages they don't want you to access. What are forward proxies? What are forward proxies? A forward proxy server sits between the client and an external network. It evaluates the outbound requests and takes action on them before relaying that request to the external resource. So a forward proxy server sits between the client and an external network. It evaluates the outbound requests and takes action on them before relaying that request to the external resource. Most proxy services that you are likely to encounter are forward proxies. Virtual private networks and web content filters are both examples of forward proxies. Then what are reverse proxies? A reverse proxy server sits between a network and multiple other internal resources. A large website might have dozens of servers that collectively serve requests from a single domain. To accomplish that, client requests would resolve to a machine that would act as a load balancer. The load balancer would then proxy that traffic back to the individual servers. Some popular open source reverse proxies are Vanish and Squid. So reverse proxy is just sitting in between the network and multiple other internal resources, in a way that if a website is overloaded, they act as a balancer in between and they try to lower the network traffic so that the web server can remain with that given speed they need. Why should you use a proxy server? There are several reasons organizations and individuals use a proxy server. Number one is to control internet usage of employees and children. Organizations and parents set up proxy servers to control and monitor how their employees or our kids use the internet. Most organizations don't want you looking at specific websites on the company time, and they can configure the proxy server to deny access to specific websites, instead redirecting you with a nice note asking you to refrain from looking at said sites from looking at said sites on the company network. They can also monitor and log all web requests, so even though they might not block the site, they would know how much time you spend cyberloafing. For example, in banks are very secure and they deal in money. Saying in case they don't want you to access websites like those, like pornography websites or game websites, they will block all websites that don't belong to the company. And every time you want to access a pornography website, they will redirect you and bring you back to the company website, telling you, stop being distracted, do your work. Or in case they let you access the website, in the background they will monitor how much time you've spent there and what you'll be looking for. If you're searching for how to kill people, and then you find pangas and guns, they will keep monitoring your data, knowing what you're searching for, everything you're typing, and which website you're accessing. So that is one of the uses of a proxy server, to control internet usage of employees and children. If you don't want your kids to access YouTube, you just use a proxy server. They will never access YouTube. Importance number 2: bandwidth savings and improved speeds. Bandwidth savings and improved speeds. Organizations can also get better overall network performance with a good proxy server. Proxy servers can catch. The word catch means saving a copy of the website locally. So it's saying that proxy servers can catch or save a copy of the website locally of popular websites. So proxy server can catch popular websites. So when you ask for www.varonis.com, the proxy server will check to see if it has the most recent copy of the site and then send you the saved copy, hence saving your bandwidth. Remember that when we talk about bandwidth, we're talking about data. We're talking about MBs. What this means is that when hundreds of people hit www.varonix.com at the same time from the same proxy server, the proxy server only sends one request to varonix.com. This saves bandwidth for the company and improves the network performance. The other importance is privacy benefits. Individuals and organizations alike use proxy servers to browse the internet more privately. Some proxy servers will change the IP address and other identifying information the web request contains. This means the destination server doesn't know who actually made the original request, which helps keep your personal information and browsing habits more private. For example, when you activate your VPN, it will tell you that you're using VPN England, Mexico, USA, etc. So Google will not know that you are in Uganda because you've activated VPN. Google might think that you are in America or in South Africa or in France. The other advantage is improved security. Proxy servers provide security benefits on top of the privacy benefits. You can configure your proxy servers to encrypt your web requests to keep prying eyes from reading your transactions. You can also prevent non-malware sites from any access through the proxy server. Additionally, organizations can couple their proxy server with a virtual private network, so remote users always access the internet through the company proxy. A VPN is a direct connection to the company network that companies provide to external or remote users. By using a VPN, the company can control and verify that their users have access to the resources, e.g. email, internal data they need, while also providing a secure connection for the user to protect the company data. So in summary, very few hackers can jump the VPN. Very few hackers can jump the VPN because the VPN is secure and private. The other advantage is, or the other importance is, get access to blocked resources. Proxy servers allow users to circumvent content restrictions imposed by companies or governments. Is the local sports ball team game backed out online? Log into a proxy server on the other side of the country and watch from there. The proxy server makes it look like you are in California, but you actually live in North Carolina. Several governments around the world closely monitor and restrict access to the internet, and proxy servers offer their citizens access to uncensored internet. For example, in Uganda, those days when they introduced OTT, they blocked people from accessing WhatsApp and Facebook. People would resort to VPNs because VPNs use proxy servers. They would help people access VPN even despite the government restricting access to Facebook, WhatsApp, and other various sites. Now that you have an idea about why organizations and individuals use proxy server, take a look at the risks below. So these are the risks that come with using proxy servers. You do not need to be conscious when you choose a proxy server. A few common risks can negate any of the potential benefits. Risk number 1. Free proxy server risks. You know the old saying, you get what you pay for? Well, using one of the many free proxy server services can be quite risky. Even the services using are the best revenue models. Free usually means they aren't investing heavily in back-end hardware or encryption. You will likely see performance issues and potential data security issues. If you ever find a completely free proxy server, tread very carefully. Some of those are just looking to steal your credit card numbers and bank pins. So be careful with free things. Free VPNs, free proxy servers, free things are costly. The other risk is browsing history log. The proxy server has your original IP address and web request information, possibly unencrypted, saved locally. Make sure to check if your proxy server logs and saves that data, and what kind of retention or law enforcement cooperation policies they follow. If you expect to use a proxy server for privacy, but the vendor is just logging and selling your data, you might not be receiving the expected value for the service. So check these things before you pay for a proxy server or VPN. The last risk is no encryption. If you use a proxy server without encryption, you might as well not use a proxy server. No encryption means you are sending your requests as plain text. Anyone who is listening will be able to pull usernames and passwords and account information really easily. Make sure whatever proxy server you use provides full encryption capability. Hope we are there. Let's look at types of proxy servers. Not all proxy servers work the same way. It's important to understand exactly what functionality you are getting from the proxy server and ensure that the proxy server meets your use case. Transparent proxy. A transparent proxy tells websites that it is a proxy server and it will still pass along your IP address, identifying you to the web browser. Businesses, public libraries, and schools often use transparent proxies for content filtering. They are easy to set up both client and server side. Those are transparent proxies. We have anonymous proxies. An anonymous proxy will identify itself as a proxy, but it won't pass your IP address to the website. This helps protect identity theft and keep your browsing habits private. They can also prevent a website from serving you targeted Come on.